Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. These webinars were something that kicked off with COVID, and they've been popular enough where we've just kept them rolling. And we did a version of this for the 2019 one, and this is our second time doing the live webinar. How many people are in here? Just plugging in.
We have 43 so far. This would actually be a lot more fun if we could do it at the loft.
Yeah.
People would have to drive there. So
we're used to doing these things in the building, which is kind of fun. My name's Tom Castiglione. About right now, I'd be asking if by a show of hands, if we were live, how many people are doing their first Block Island race. I think there's a bunch this time around, which is really cool to see. I've done every Block Island race, I think, since 1991, as far back as I can remember. Had a good run of it in the last few years. It was with team Emoticon last year. We won the overall around the island. We won East Coast J109, won the division, had a really good regatta, won the around the island the last couple times before that. So it's been kind of fun. With me is Jack Orr, who's also been around for a good 20 years, longer. Jack, how long have you been here?
Well, I've been in Connecticut for 23 years, but I was in San Diego starting in 1988. So
you've done every Block Island since then, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've done every Block Island since then. Yes.
I know you're on Ghost to the Far 30 this time around, right?
Correct. And we're gonna be doing the coastal racing, I believe.
Awesome. I'm also doing that division on Acadia, the new J45. All right. Our goals for today are just to try to cover a whole bunch of topics: pre-race prep, weather, current, furling at code 0. We're going to spend a lot of time on around the island, mostly in the coastal and around the island portion of the event. A little bit of the Windward Leeward area, right down to just getting ready before you even get there. So just the fun things that always sort of pop up right off the bat just before you get there is trying to get your crews to sign their crew waivers online with their world sailing IDs, which they never do until very shortly before the event. And then there's a scramble and always drama. So get the crew waiver stuff set up so they have the passwords to go in well ahead of time and get those filled out. And that's almost always the biggest drama. Trying to be ready to go sailing. My rule, I don't think it was mine, I think I stole it from Blazer. The rule was the last person to fill out the crew waivers had to buy the first round of Mudslides, and that seemed to speed things up pretty quickly. Let's see, rating certificates need to be in by June 3rd, which is close, so get your certificates in for ORC or PERF, whatever you're doing. And there's no changes after June 12th, so you could be stuck with it if you have an error on it. And I say that because now is a great time to check your ORC rating or check your PERF certificate, see what's on it, make sure the cells are right, make sure the numbers are right, and don't take anything for granted there. Usually, so this year has been great. There haven't been a lot of errors, but it's usually data entry from any number of places. So just keep an eye on that stuff and make sure you don't get caught out. Especially with ORC, all the sails that you're supposed to be using are now listed on those certificates. So everybody you're sailing against can see exactly what you have on there and what you don't. So don't get caught out.
And now you can declare all those sails, but you don't have to carry them all every day. So,
right.
So for sure you could look at the weather report and not carry a couple heavy sails, but you can't send somebody out to drop them back off for you, if the weather changes.
Yeah. So there is no, you can have a support boat. You could have a bunch of friends on a power boat cocktailing, watching your race. That's awesome. But support boat contact, if they see you handing things off, sails, jerry jugs, whatever it might be, that is not allowed in the sailing instructions this year.
Yeah.
Bottom cleaning is a big thing. You obviously can't do it in the harbor. It won't, it's against the law there. So you go outside and there are divers set up. Those instructions, or there'll be a sheet in your racing package when you get there, your registration package. That'll give you the details and the timing, and you got to get out there and queue up. You probably got to do it pretty early or pretty late in the day. The queues get big, and it is something you have to strategize on and when you're getting your bottom clean.
Yeah, and it's okay to do it the night, like if you want to do it in the evening for the next day, you don't need to do it in the morning every day, but But definitely should, what do you think you should do it probably twice at least during the regatta, maybe 3 times?
I know I always say Sunday and Wednesday. If I'm sure if things are hot and heavy and it's really tight, I'll get it done more, but twice during the week's usually a good plan.
Or if it's a particularly light regatta, right?
Mhm.
Like then you want to make sure that everything's as spiffy on the bottom as you can.
Right. I have a feeling last year it was a pretty tight division, and I'm pretty sure we got it done one extra time than the 2. And it was worth it. Weigh-ins, if your boat is weighing in, start talking about the weights now. That's probably more so than crew waivers. The weight thing is a huge problem when you get there, and there's inevitably somebody that is using their weight from 10 years ago that they're certain they are now. And just ask everyone for a real weight now. If you guys are sailing in an event, bring a scale, check them beforehand, just to understand that you're not going on a starvation diet on Saturday when you get there.
And that's really what, probably, Tommy, the J105s and the J109s are really
The only one I
probably
can think
the
of
only
right
ones
now,
that need to
but
worry about that.
I've spent a lot of time jogging in Block Island because of some surprises. So okay, moving on. So granted, you're going to get there Saturday, hopefully not Sunday. Hopefully Sunday's a practice day. And my goal is that when you leave the dock on Monday, you're already in the routine. There is a solid plan in place because you've already done it for a day, hopefully at least Sunday. And you've sailed, you've gone through the paces, you've assigned jobs. Who's got the lunch? Who's got water? We're filling up the water jugs, whatever the case may be. I always assign someone specific to be in charge of the sails. What sails are on the board, are on the boat. You can't change data. You can't change once you leave the dock, so you got to have the right sails. So I put someone in charge of everything, and they have to sign off on it with me at the end, before we leave the dock, that we know what sails are on the boat. There's a list in their hand and they're written down and they can show it, and the water's on board and the lunch and Oreos or whatever it might be. Treat your racing practice like a race. Well, treat your practice like a race. It is the most important day of the week as far as I'm concerned. You're getting all of the nonsense out of the way on Sunday, practicing before Monday, and if not, Monday's your practice day, and that's generally not a great way to get off to a good race. Use the same start time if you can. Leave the dock early. It's always nice to say let's meet at noon and just have a nice casual day, but get out there early. Figure out who takes 20 extra minutes to leave the house, or who gets lost on their bicycle on the way over. Whatever the cases may be, just use the start time and get out there and go sailing. And frankly, you get done a lot quicker and you can enjoy the day. Sunday, like I said, is my first bottom cleaning on the way in. Get the bottom clean.
Yeah, I think on that point back about the routine too, Tommy. I mean, the thing is a lot of times with Block Island, because it's such a long week, you're not always going to find the same guys that are your standard guys. So you'll have some new people on the boat. So, finding out, making the routine is really good, because almost every boat I've ever sailed on Block Island, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually Tuesday night or Wednesday by the time you actually get into the groove of racing and you feel like you're actually up to speed. And the guys that can do well on Monday and Tuesday, because they're already sort of in the groove, it's a huge advantage.
No question. The boat I'm racing on, we just did the 3 days of American Spring Series. Tons of fun, by the way, with the 3-day format. We've been out sailing, obviously, like Jack says, different crew. We're going to go out practicing on the 21st just to take care of all the stuff that we learned during the last 3 days, get all that so that our practice is a race practice and we're not putting tape marks on things instead of going sailing and learning the boat some more.
Right. And, we're going to probably do a practice day as well sometime before Memorial Day. And then for sure, we're going to do the 3 days of annual regatta in Newport. So, just like Tommy says, we'll get the boat like as cleaned up and sorted as we can before we get to Block, because the delivery things always get sort of moved all over the place. But if you got all your marks in place before you motor the boat out. That's a great way to start the season.
I keep putting Sunday bottom cleaning on here, so apparently I thought that was important as I was creating this.
Yeah,
Anyway.
you got to take a bath once a week at least, right? Whether you need it or not.
Exactly. Practice days, obvious stuff. You're prepping the boat, you're getting everybody in race mode. And the race mode thing is important. Get everybody thinking like they're going out on a sailboat race, not a cruise, that they're hiking as hard as they would be in the race. Again, get out start time, go out, go sailing, pick a couple of marks out there. You can even use the mark right off of the harbor there and just start timing. A lot of times, if you're often boats that are going out into Block Island Sound for the first time, there's a lot more chop, there's a lot more things going on than say Long Island Sound. So it takes a little while to get the feel for the boat in that lumpier condition. Tacks, jibes, sets, douses, practicing appeal if you're in the coastal thing. Also, Jack mentioned the other day, if you're doing the coastal racing, go take a look at R4 down at the bottom of the southwest corner and just use that as a mark and sail around and get used to the currents and just get used to what you're feeling out there.
Right. And like Tommy says, the sea state is so different than Long Island Sound if you're used to sailing there, or even if you sail inside all the time in Newport. It's rougher, and the current, it's like there's a lot of current out there, and it really affects your tacking angles and your jibing angles. So it's good to get out there, even if the conditions are a little bit different wind-wise. Like invariably Sunday is windy and then Monday is nothing, or vice versa. So, but getting out there and getting those, figuring out what the jibe angles are. I mean, so many of the boats now, almost all of the boats, well, 90% of the boats, Tommy, are asymmetric spinnaker boats.
Yeah.
And your jibing angles are going to be are affected by current, believe it or not. But also because of the sea state, your angle is going to be it's going to be a little bit wider than you used to when you're sailing in flat water.
And your target boat speeds are hard to achieve. So sometimes you have to edit those a tenth or two to compensate for the chop.
Or allow yourself to get up to speed a little longer.
We'll talk about furling and unfurling a little bit later, but things like code 0 twingers, where your twingers set up, how these sail, if you have a new stay sail, where it tacks to, where it sheets to. These are all generally moments of great discussion on boats when you're going out for the first time. Also, jib leads outboard, where do they set up? Where's the right place? Where's the right pad eye? Where's the block? Where's the sheet? All that nonsense that we all know is so much fun to figure out as you go. So,
all right, Tommy, somebody just piped up in the chat and said something about starts and how they can be challenging. And that's another thing to practice if you get a chance. I'm pretty sure that North U is going to have a J109 starting clinic on Sunday. Not, obviously, if you're not in the J109 class, you probably won't have a chance to do that, but you can at least get out there and, like Tom said, just pick a buoy or whatever and practice.
You can go right
starts.
off
Probably
the
the race.
I think it's a red and white, or I can't remember.
Do we know if the race committee is just going to put out some marks on Sunday?
Don't know.
Okay, well, if they do, we should find out and let everybody know, because just going out and doing, even if you just do 5 or 6 of them, do some timed runs.
Right.
And for the guys that are doing the coastal racing, we're probably all going to start pretty much right outside of the salt pond, right?
Yes.
Is that right? Our starting area is there, Tom, probably?
In the neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good place to get out there and play around with just doing some timed runs and getting a feel with the different sea state and so on, how to get the boat up to speed and how long it takes to get around the
Well, Jack, to the point, and working on your timing is find that government mark, get downwind of it like you're in a start, put 2 minutes on your clock, say you need to be on starboard at full speed when you get to that mark in 2 minutes. And that's a great way to practice the starts in lieu of a starting sequence. All right. Moving along. You will be sailing in fog. I think we had a solid 3 days of fog last time around. So you have to be prepared for it. Lots of boats have expedition. Great GPSs today have so much stuff on it, you can figure it out. But ping your starting circle, know where your starting circle is, ping your marks, ping the finish line. the fog comes and goes so rapidly. I can think of several races in the last couple of cycles of this where you could not see at all the top mark or the bottom mark, and you were trying to figure it out as you went.
And for us that are probably doing the coastal racing, we'll probably do government marks and so on.
Mhm.
So all of those, if you got them plotted in the GPS, it's all right there.
Yeah, this is the 2019 course list for the coastal racing and the Round the Island race. Every one of these should be in your GPS or in your extra. These should be all in there ahead of time and ready to go. So you're not fussing around trying to figure out what our bill, our stick, or figuring out what any of these are at any point. You should have them, understand what they are, pick them, and then you can very quickly route your course and get on with sailing instead of scrambling. With that, when everything's in there, this was a sheet. Now this is a handwritten. I just cut and paste the chart. This is from AYC this past weekend, and this is race 4. And once the navigator plugs in all the marks and has the course in the computer, I then make this just handwritten that I can keep in my pocket, and then I give it to another one to the bowman if he wants it. And I'll sit down with the whole crew before the race starts and go over everything that's happening. And obviously it's self-explanatory, but so for the bowman's sake, the first mark heading is for F is 223, the true wind angle is 47, and we know that's a jib. It's a distance of 0.75. Mark C is a starboard rounding, 008 is the heading, 136 true wind angle, that's an A2 spinnaker. So he knows the next sail he's going to have is the A2. So he has in his pocket if he forgets, and I have it in my pocket if I forget, exactly what's going on, how much time he has, what the next sail is for the next mark. So he can start, the bowman can start preparing at, frankly, his leisure to have the next sail ready to go. The other part of doing this is the continuous, are we there yet conversations for the navigator who's trying to concentrate on a bunch of things, and how far, what's the distance, what's our heading. Ideally, you'll have this up as a range and bearing on an instrument where you can see it, but this is a really great cheat sheet. And I looked at it all 3 days just to say, okay, what mark am I going to and what heading is it? And just trying not to bother a navigator who's busy doing other stuff.
Yeah. And then make sure that they're all the right ones.
Well, also, I mean, then you go, okay, we're here at F, which is the start finish line, and then we're going to C, and I drew it out a few times. We're reaching over here, and then we're going down here, and then we're going over here. So it gives everybody sitting in the cockpit a visual of what's happening.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm mildly annoyed at this because I always buy weather, pay for weather from TideTech, Chelsea Carsland. I've been using her a number of years now. I think she's absolutely fantastic. Her weather information is generally spot on, and she gives a lot of insight to what's going on out there on the race course, rather than, you don't care about the Nova Scotia high and what's happening over Wyoming, but she's going to talk exactly about what to look for and what's going to happen. And there's obvious information here you're looking at with the table, but then there's some things to really pay attention to in the alternative scenarios in the summary. I pulled this from 2019, which was the one time in 2019 I did not listen to her forecast. And she was predicting, well, there's a front arriving, and she was unclear about the time. It says high-res model, 3 to 4 p.m. passage, other indicated closer, which is far away, which might have made me turn off the thought process that it was coming. But on the last leg, I let a boat get to the right of me, and this righty did come in. We were out there fairly late, and I think I got a second this race because I was not paying attention to Chelsea's forecast. So a lot of little notes here, comments, fog liftings, slight backing. So, okay, we're at 220, it says slight backing. Why is she thinking this? Look for a left, protect the left kind of thing. Front is approaching. This is the front that came in, and this 250 right here, we were sailing 200, 220, and this 250 came in. I let it get a boat get to right to me, and all was over. A lot of good stuff too, just to figure out what the window is, and wind expecting today, unstable conditions, shifts and puffs. So that's hey guys, shifts and puffs today. We got to be extra dialed in to shifting gears. Max left 190, max right before the front. So looking at that, okay, max left 190. Let's say the max left does happen. You know, this is probably all the left we're ever going to see. So you don't have to be too worried about that. Let's stay here. Let's start worrying about the right if it's coming in. Same thing, same forecast, and I think the same day. Swells elevated from the passing of whatever storm Claudette. Seas 5 to 6 feet. So what does that mean? Lumpy. That means set your boat up for lump. That means have a conversation on your way out. We're expecting more chop than normal, more waves. So we've got to set up the sails punchier. We've got to set the rig up punchier, and we've got to have more power in general. So let's be thinking about that on the way in. Another huge note here. She mentions 10 to 15 degrees of right shear in the wind, meaning bigger puffs may tend to be righties. And sometimes that's not necessarily puffs, but the wind at the top of the rig is more right than the wind at the bottom of the rig. Generally indicates a right shift for the most part, but puffs generally are that from that shearing direction. And here's another huge clue: timing of front. Clue: front is coming. Winds will begin to decrease within an hour ahead of the front. Well, sure enough, when I was not paying attention to that forecast that day, the wind did get super light for a bit, and that should have been the clue if I was remembering this was in here, that there was a right shift coming. And I remembered it very, very, very specifically when I created this thing a week ago.
Yeah, and Tommy, we had that, you know, in the spring. That shear, talking about the shear is a good thing to talk about, because the big difference, if you go back to that slide, you know, Tommy saw this coming, and we talked about this actually earlier, because we had the same situation going on this weekend down at Spring Series, where we had quite a bit of shear, because, you know, the water temperature is probably 57 degrees and the air temperature was 70 degrees. And so the wind is doing all kinds of crazy things. So we're still going to have somewhat of those situations when we're out at Block Island, because that's the ocean and it doesn't warm up as much as the sound. So what, Tommy, typically the water temperature is probably 62 to 65.
Yeah.
Third week in June, maybe. Certainly not anywhere close to 70, which is partly why we're going to probably see fog. You know, we see fog all the time too, but just be aware that when you will get those, you know, that shear situation, that's going to be made even worse by tide and by sea state. So all those things are things to keep in mind when you see that. And now, do you know if the weather report's going to come to everybody by email?
Don't know.
Do we know the details of that yet?
I'm sure it's going to go to an email.
But we think all the competitors are going to get it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I got to keep rolling here. We're running a little behind. Mark Box. They are using Mark bots again. Kind of cool. They had them last time. Pretty easy to see, if I recall. But one thing to know is when they're moving the start pin, whatever they're doing, it's easy to see when they're not marked boats and there's a boat and they're towing and they're streaming and there's all the drama that goes on with that. When they move a marked boat, you may not know. So just because you ping the start at the beginning of the day doesn't mean it's the same. So you got to constantly re-ping that and make sure you know where the pin is. They do move and you barely notice they're moving. One note after last year, there should be or can be for the windward leeward courses a long and short weather mark, meaning from the start there'll be, let's say, a 1.5 mile leg for the faster boats and a 1 mile leg for the shorter boats. So you got to make darn sure you're aware of which mark you're going to. The purpose of this is to spread the boats so the little boats don't get run over constantly by the big boats. 2019, the 109, we were just crashing into, we were all going to the same mark, so we were running into the big boats pretty quickly, and the big boats weren't any happier about it than we were. So that should be a great change for this year.
And this is another thing with the fog, right, Tom?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
If you ping it, you got it. You don't have to worry. You know, if you start to lose some visibility, you know where you're going.
Yep. All right. Just a quick general look at current. This is an ebbing current, using TideTech software, which is something new. I hear it's cool. I've been kind of looking at it, trying to learn it. So far, so good, though. If you want to check it out, it's a small membership fee. The general windward lured area is in here. So current wise, you can see it's coming straight, and then it bends up north, and it bends up south. So depending on where they put your course, just be aware what the current's doing, because it could be bending, it could be turning, and oftentimes we find that we're sailing along up here and it's more straight, but as you get up here towards the boat, it's going more easterly. So be aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember racing probably 6 years ago, and we were in the course that was, generally just to the northwest of where Tommy has his cursor now. Kind of on the edge of that light colored zone there. And basically, if you didn't basically go to the port ley line at the beginning of the day when the wind was building and the current was at that stage, if you didn't go to the port ley line, you were going to be in the back of the fleet. So it's a big deal to figure that out for sure.
So use your tide data on your computers to figure that out. This is obviously just for show, but you're showing a heat map. There's tons of current down here. There's tons of current here. It's super important, but it's not the only important current. And we're going to go through each corner and explain each one now. But the focus is always at 1BI, of course, but that is wildly important. But I'll show you in a minute why there's still other things going on. All right. So for the sake of our around the island race today, we're going to assume that we're going counterclockwise
in a flood.
In an ebb, actually. In this chart, it's a flood. Yes, sorry, yes. But we're good. Everybody, there's strategic factors here.
So first of all, Tommy, is this one of the slides that you got from Randy?
Yes.
We need to make sure and thank Randy Needham for helping us out with
Thank you, Randy. He was kind enough to give me all these expedition plots. Thank you. Every side, finish line, by the way, for this race is usually between two boats right off there. This is a little hard to find sometimes because there's a lot of boats around. Faster divisions will probably, everybody could go around the wind farm, but for the general around the island race for the fleet, they usually send the big boats if there's wind around the wind farm. If you're in one of the coastal divisions, I would guarantee that you're going to see the wind farm. So that's, I've never done the wind farm yet, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we did that on the Swan 45 last time, and it was spectacular. Like, we had a nice southwest breeze, and it sort of have that extra distance out there to go around. It broadened the sort of spinnaker angles as we went around the bottom of the island. It was spectacular.
Yeah. All right, southwest corner, the very first thing off the start, which is out in this neighborhood over here, your first rounding mark is going to be R4. Now, you saw from that heat mark, there's tons and tons of current here. So generally in a southwester, you end up tacking in close to shore, getting out of the current that's flowing in. This is a mark you have to honor, R6, I think, Jack, right?
Yep. And that's important because these two marks, believe it or not, the race, this sets the tone. Like, if you're going to fall behind in the race, this is basically what, probably a quarter of the way into the race time wise, but it's at easily 1/3 of the importance of the race. And what happens is when you're in a flood like this, the currents actually, they don't show it here, but it's actually bending around the bottom of the island and going somewhat north. So what people do is they short tack along the beach to get around 6, and then the guys go on the outside, and the guys that don't short tack the beach go outside, and they all end up converging at 4 down at the bottom corner. And because there's so much current there, if it's light at all, you could have 30 boats parked at that mark.
A lot of boats to be gained there.
And so there's lots of gains and losses to be made in that spot right there.
So yeah, you come out of here, everything seems perfectly fine. There's no big deal. You start clearing land and you're getting punched. This is 2.12, 2.08. So you're getting punched with a lot of current. and you're on happy ley line here and everything's great. And then the next thing you know, you're up over here. So you got to work real hard to stay on this mark. Next part here is, this is where the island gets super high, and the wind, the southwest breeze, even though it's blowing right on land, lifts off the water pretty significantly and gets pretty light in here. So you want to be careful that you're not getting in too close to shore, because the southwesterly rises off the water to get over the island. So you got to be careful about that.
Right. And the tendency is to get around that mark and try to get into the shore as much as you can to get out of that current. But you have, like Tommy says, if it's cold water and it's a warm day, that could be lifting way off, and you could run out of wind in that sort of 32 feet zone there, that right in front of the arrow at the very bottom, where he's talking. Now, the drop mark is usually where, Tommy?
That's next.
That's on the next one.
Okay, just again, to close up that, wow, this is how much current you're dealing with there. There's tons and tons of current on this corner. So a lot of opportunities to make gains by playing this right and staying and playing the current, so you're not ended up way over here getting swept out.
Yeah, and in that picture, you can really see too, if you go back, you know, how much of that current is ripping straight north. So that's why people tend to try to short tack the beach, but it can be lighter in there and you get less current, but it's lighter. So you just have to play that, you know, it's like you got to choose your spot and tactically who's around you. If you want to sort of stay on top of somebody, or you want to stay with somebody, or you want to break away and try to get outside to avoid that R4 melee at the bottom.
Yes. All right, southeast corner. My screen is frozen. Nope. All right, southeast corner. Sorry. All right, so we've dealt with R4. We're ripping across. Usually this is a fetch. I think this is a mark of the course. This is usually a good rip and fetch. Last year, though, the breeze was southeast yesterday, and I know we're talking about consuming it's a southwest, but interesting point happened, and we got beat up a little bit here because they dropped back in the old days. There was no drop mark. They didn't drop a mark here to keep everybody off the land. And inevitably somebody, and I'm sure everybody, a lot of people on this call have a whole bunch of stories about boats landed on the rocks because there's so much current ripping off of here. This is just a screenshot of the current ripping down here. So you're in this current that seems to be happily moving in your favor, and then you get faced with the northerly current coming around the backside of the island as it splits off. The current's going this way, it goes down the island and then out. So because of current with the Moticon, we were sailing, we had a lot of traffic, and we just kept getting sort of a little bit too far out and a little bit too far out, and we were just forced to tack offshore a little bit. And the boat that managed to find a clean lane and stay inside of us put a lot of time on us. As soon as we hit this corner, let's say the mark's over here in this image, and as soon as we got into that, he really made up a good time by staying tight into this easterly flow. Okay, same screen. Southwesterly, you're going to put a spinnaker up here, and now you're going to have that great famous run down the backside of Block Island, which we see all the pictures of, and I can't wait for. If it's light and you're jibing, which happens often, this is a pretty big, for the same reason it's shallow here. The wind has lifted off the island and it's very light in here. So if your jibe angles if you're forced into jibe angles, be careful that you're not on a port jibe heading into this neighborhood, because it gets very light very quickly and touches down somewhere back in this neighborhood here. So this is a bit of a dead zone usually, and I've always made gains on the people that got sucked into there. And you're putting your bow up, you're driving the port, whatever the case may be, you get in trouble in here more often than not. And your next mark is, what is this, 7, I think?
Yeah, and I think, Tommy, if you kind of look at that picture, it shows that the current, even though the current may be, if it's ebbing, you happen to be ebbing and it's against you, the current's changing direction quite a bit down at that bottom corner, but in general, it's pretty much going either straight up or straight down. And it's pretty even It's probably heavier as you get out to that white zone. But it's not enough to make up for not having wind.
So if you look at this, it's straight up and straight down, but the current also bends in here. So you're not getting you're not getting much current, at least until you get into the death zone in here.
Right.
All right. Okay. So same thing, just be careful on the jibe angles and watch out for the rocks. Here's Green Canyon, you round to the southeast, the spinnaker's up, everybody's having a great time. And your next thing you have to honor is Green Can 7. This is the moment where you're setting up for 1BI in a pretty huge strategy plan with tactics. Just know in here, same reasons you're getting caught. There are some shallow spots in here, so bigger boats need to pay attention pretty carefully. This is not on the mark of the course, but this is. So if you find yourself here, and you should be here when you get there, just be careful of these shallow spots in here.
Yeah, and don't you think, Tommy, too, that sometimes it almost seems like that when you're in this lane headed to 1BI, that sometimes the wind actually accelerates as it goes over. And it always seems like wind goes ahead on you.
Well, yeah, land starts falling away. So I think the breeze here's the high part of the island and it gets low here. So the breeze starts accelerating again. Yeah.
Right. This is the spot where guys wrap their spinnakers around their head stays.
All right. Okay. So just a quick look, 1BI. Here's the heat map again. There is a shoal. You don't sometimes see it, but there is a shoal here, which is why 1BI is there in the first place. And the current just trucks through here. Just this quick, I'm not even sure this is max current, but it was 1.78 when I took this slide. So this is the heat map of what you're dealing with from Green Can 7 to 1BI. And here we are. All right. So massive current all in here, foul current going this way. Oftentimes you're at 7 and you are in a perfect, great, wonderful angle to sail absolutely straight to 1BI and you're on run line and everything is perfectly happy. If you do that, when you get to 1BI, you will be over here. And everybody that, even though it seems totally wrong and doesn't feel right, and because you're sailing lower possibly than you should, your boat needs to be pointing basically here to get there on the line. We played it really well. We had a couple of boats behind us because of what I was mentioning at the southeast point, and we passed every one of them just by forcing us down, getting low, staying low, and the current literally picks you up and just takes you there. Rum line, you end up here. Your rum line is here. Your course, what you're steering, is practically here to get there. So you got to be really aware of what you're cogging when you're heading for 1BI.
And like Tommy and I talked about this last time too, is what'll happen is that your apparent wind will get all messed up as well. So you just really have to be on your sail trimming and so on, and it'll feel like you're doing totally the wrong thing. And because you're pointed in a weird direction and the sails seem soft and everything else. But like Tommy said, you're trucking along there because the current is pushing you, and it has a big effect on how the sail's set up. And just be aware that it's, just like going through the race or going through the gut, the sails are going to act strangely as you go through that zone, because the pressure is going to change quite a bit based on your apparent wind.
Okay. Yeah. So again, you get past Green 7 and foul current, you're pointing your boat here to get there. Maybe it's here, not sure. Yeah, it's all in here because you just get sucked so far away. And there were comments made after this. How did you guys do that? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. On the flip side, if by chance, if the current is going west, if you have an inbound current, the most important thing to consider is, yes, you might be able to straight line it or closer to it. Except once you hit this 2 knots of current, and this is a lovely spinnaker, and you're having a great day, and the sandwiches are out, and this is really pleasant, and then you get nailed with this current. If you have a kite up and the current is going this way, suddenly your apparent wind is going to rip forward, and you're going to be in that jib before you know it. So at this point, at 7, you need to have a very solid jib plan when we're going up, how we're taking the spinnaker down, because as you clear into this current, the breeze goes forward, your boat's getting pushed that way, you're steering that way, the wind goes forward, and you're in the jib before you know it, and it happens fast. Also, like Jack mentioned before, this is one of those choke points where people are sailing this way, people are sailing that way, and everybody ends up bunched up. So it's a funky little thing, but going this way, tuck in close to the shoal, sail deep, be careful of your cog that you're pointing at 1BI so you don't end up over here and then it's a long
or the other way, right, Tommy?
and
Or
the other
get
way
sucked,
going this
get
way.
sucked into the mark.
Yeah.
That happens too, right? And then if you got sort of 15 boats, one of the things that we didn't talk about, but we talked about earlier when we were going over this was, the around the island race is, probably 30% of what you're thinking about is fleet management, because if you're a fast boat, you're going to spend the whole race catching smaller boats. And if you're a slow boat, you're going to spend the whole race trying to stay ahead of fast boats. And basically what ends up happening is everybody sort of converges at these spots. And then that, especially on the backside of the island, you've got, hopefully you got a spinnaker run and it's nice and you got plenty of pressure and so on, but you've got this, every kind of size boat going down the same lane. So you got to really watch for your lane management and, keeping clear air, because, what's going to happen is, you're suddenly going to, if you're in a 30-foot boat, you're going to get caught by, these 60-foot boats or 45-foot boats, just about the point that we're on the, at that green mark or along that edge. And it can get pretty dicey.
Yeah, I'm going to go quickly because we're late, but it's funny because now you've got boats pointing here downwind, trying to get through, boats that have tacked and are now rounding and going upwind, and it is wild over here. So just keep your eyes out and be ready. All right, 1BI to the finish. I tell you, I don't think I've ever done this part of the beat and never felt great, won or lost, that I handled this perfectly. There's a surprising amount going on. I was grateful last year that it was a fetch with a code 0 or a jib, so it was easy. But you come around, you have all that current you're dealing with, and you have all that traffic. So what's going on? You've got a favored tack to deal with, you've got current to deal with, and you've got generally a ton of traffic to deal with. So you've got those three factors weighing into everything. And do you want to try to get out of a little current? Getting down here is out of the most current to try to finish. So lots of stuff going on. Number one factor is number one factor in the beginning is current. Number two factor is favored tack. So hopefully favored tack is starboard and you run down and you get into the more manageable current here. Hopefully traffic management will be able to put you there. Also, the breeze has built considerably. Well, let me say the sea breeze generally builds throughout the day. At this point of the day, usually the breeze is pumped up a bit here, and the waves are pumped up. So this lighter settings that you started out in the morning, you're going to be in a different mode, maybe a different sail. If it's been light generally and it's on the edge, you put up your light jib and you find out it's not your light, it's your medium now, because there's generally more pressure here. As the day goes on, heats up and the waves increase, so power and the right sails.
Yeah, so everybody sort of forgets that when you do this race, you're starting at whatever 11 o'clock in the morning, right? By the time you get around, it's 3 hours or 2.5 hours later, and like Tommy says, the sea breeze is filled in by then, and it's a different day than when you started. So you just have to, keep your eyes open.
Always windy. Yep. All right. Moving on. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Yeah, we're doing good. We got 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's funny. We were out. Jack will talk about it a little bit more, but there's, you have A3s, you have furlers, you have tweeners, you have large roach head sails, and they're all on furlers. And we could talk for days on what a code 0 is, but we won't kill ourselves. With all these furling sails comes another whole level of things that the crew needs to deal with. I spend a significant portion of my time helping teams learn how to use their furlers. And here are the two quickest tips that I can think of to help out. 2-to-1 tack line is a must. You need to secure the drum. So if you're having trouble furling sails, if it's always drama, focus on this for a second. The 2-to-1 furler, this is not a great picture because it's a little too tight. But the 2-to-1 furler locks the drum in place so it can't move around and wrap the drum. So oftentimes you don't have it, you have a sprit. You can simply add one with some spectra, tie spectra around with a loop. You can pretty easily make a 2-to-1 out of the sprit, the tack line that comes out of the sprit, loop it through something set up like this, even if it's lashed through, and stabilize the tack. Second,
Yeah, Tommy, not as good option if you have a shorter sprit. Maybe you're in the performance cruising, tack the drum directly to the end of the sprit.
Yep.
It's not as good for adjusting the luff of the sail, and so on. So it's not as ideal. But what Tommy's getting at here is there's so much torsion in the rope that if you can't stabilize the furler from spinning on its own, it will spin on its own from the torsion of the rope and wrap the furling line around it as it goes. And then you'll spend, basically minutes unwinding the thing to be able to operate it.
Good segue there. The furling line. These are pictures that I ripped off the internet earlier, so hope I don't get in trouble. But this is the back end of the furling line, which runs usually fairly short, depending on the boat, somewhere by the mast. But it needs to be in a system. It needs to be in a purchase, so it runs out of the furler all the way back through a system, and then with some shock cord to keep some tension on it. And that'll allow the furling line to furl. More often than not, these end up just loose, and they turn into a giant knot around the furler. If we were in a live room right now, a bunch of people would be laughing, say, yeah, I've been there, done that. So super important. You absolutely have to have a setup like this. Your furling line has to be run through a block. You can use
it can be a snatch block, it can be a carabiner, it can be a hook, anything you can do to sort of keep tension on the thing so it
with shock cord
run.
Yeah, doesn't need to be tight, it just needs to have a tension so it can run.
Right.
Classic example, like I said, we've got I'll use this case. We've got a $2,000 cable, we've got a $5,000 furling line, we've spent an absolute truckload of money on anti-torsion equipment. And then we put it on a spin shackle on a rope that's going to just twist and twist and twist. And then the block that I believe this also twists. So you got to get rid of all these moving parts in the system. Same could be said for the halyard. We're hoisting a very expensive head swivel on a halyard with a spin shackle, just like this. It was sitting on my desk. And all that money we spent is being tossed away by having this spin shackle instead of a dog bone or something tight. If you small J99s, smaller boats, smaller inshore boats, often your tack lines are stripped. They're just bare spectra, whatever. Halyards are the same thing. They're all stripped. When they're stripped like that, there's no anti-torsion ability of it. So those things just spin and spin and spin and spin. It's perfectly fine for windward leeward spinnakers, not great for code 0. So if you're going to take your smaller sprit boat that doesn't have that, get a covered tack line, get a covered spinnaker halyard, and that will be money well spent compared to how much money you're spending on the furling system itself. Yeah,
this is certainly a topic that we could spend
most of my day
5 hours on
this. Yeah. Anyway, Jack, you were just going to explain quickly what.
Yeah. So basically, everybody, the first question out of everybody's mouth is, what are all these code sales, right? And that in this case, we have 2 rules that we're using in this regatta, and one of them is ORC, which is an international performance rule. It's a VPP. And then we have YRLIS perf, basically. And they have completely different rules about how they handle this. But they're similar, but they are completely different. But so essentially, code sales, or they have many names, but in general, what we call a code 0 would be a sail that's on the far left. It's got a 75% mid girth. If you race perf in YRLIS, you have to declare the sail, but it's actually considered a spinnaker, so it doesn't change your rating.
Yeah, just a note there. Perf YRALIS requires you to declare or give them a certificate for any sail that's less than 85%. So if you have
90%, I think.
90, yeah. So if you have a 3A, you should have it on there. And certainly your code 0. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. Yep. Yep. And ORC, obviously, if you're ORC racing, you have to declare every single sail. So that would be declared as well. So the sort of the difference going on from there is that when you get below the 75% mid-girth sail, depending on what wind range you want to cover, you can go anywhere from 74 to 55% mid-girth. And what does that do? If you go to the far right, you can see that a 55% mid-girth sail is basically a Genoa. And it acts like a Genoa. It has the same strengths as a Genoa, meaning it can go tighter to the wind. In some cases, on some boats, you can actually go upwind better than you can with the little jib in light air. But when you broad reach, get deeper angles, it's less area than a spinnaker, a traditional spinnaker. So, or one of these code sails that's in the middle. Now, the sail that's in the sort of in the middle is what we say it's 62 because that's just the average there. Basically, that sail covers sort of both ranges a little bit better. It's easier to trim and so on than a 75% mid-girth sail. It goes upwind better. It furls better, but it won't go quite as deep as the 75% sail. The difference here is that sail under YRLIS, I guess it's called a large roach Hetzel or a tweener. You have to declare it, and you're going to probably get 6 seconds penalty for using it on your distance rating. And if you go all the way down to and so you can basically go from anywhere from 74 to 55%, and that sail basically costs the same. If you're sailing ORC, because it's sort of more dynamic rule and it's a performance rule, it takes into account how all the sails sail at different angles. So these sails would carry either a penalty or a benefit based on what wind angle and what wind range you're carrying it in. And so that's a consideration for picking those sails based on your boat. But if you're racing perf, it's a legal sail. You just have to make sure and declare it and know that you're going to pay some rating penalty to carry it. And it's up to you to decide on your boat whether or not that's worth it or not.
This is the preferred ORC sail.
Yeah, in that range, anywhere between basically 60 and 70 or 60 and 60 and 66%, somewhere in there. It seems like that's a good mix of upwind and downwind angles that you don't get penalized too far one way or the other. But let it be known also that if you do sail in ORC and you have a 75% mid-girth sail, unlike PHRF, it's not just considered a spinnaker. It is actually a sail that's declared as a separate kind of sail, and it will get your rating adjusted based on what the VPP thinks it does to your performance.
And
does that make sense, Tommy?
This is the least amount of penalty. This is the biggest penalty. This is a bigger penalty. And
right. So, anyway, there's lots of different sails. We could talk for hours about this. But essentially, just remember that you can use any of these sails in both rules. You just have to know what the rating implications are. Also, in both rules, you can carry, for those of us that are sort of in reaching divisions, you can carry sails, jib size sails out on the end of the sprit if you're, trying to do some funky dual-headed rigs. But once again, you have to declare it, and there are limitations. So don't just think you can throw a jib or any kind of funky sail out on the end of the sprit and use it on a crazy reaching leg.
That's a whole other seminar.
Yeah, that's 5 seminars probably.
All right, overnight repair right by Payne's Dock, by Deadeye Dick's. We'll all pass it Narragansett in. I'm sure everybody knows where it is. We will have posted hours. Basically, they'll be in the morning. They're going to be there all night long, and they're going to be there. The important thing is to assign someone immediately to get that sail to the loft the very second the boat hits the dock. Do not wait till the cocktail party. Do not wait till later. It makes the very tired, overworked sailmakers very, very cranky. So try to be the first one there with your sail. Get in line. Get your sail in line as quickly as you can, and you'll have a pleasant experience there. But they've been doing this a number of years now, and it's worked out pretty well. But we do not have everything. We do not have an entire sail off there. We have tape, and we'll fix a spinnaker and tape, we'll tape a spinnaker and tape it down. Some instances there might be some cloth there to do. It's a lot of tape and stitching keeping you going.
Yeah, there's going to be sewing machines and hot knives.
Yeah. So
and some cloth, but not unlimited amount.
Sure. We oddly enough, the sail loft is there, and there are very few north bags in this loft. It's usually other stuff. Quite often it's other sails that show up, and the Genoas don't even have spreader patches on it. So if you're hoisting new sails for the first time, make sure you even have spreader patches. I don't know why they don't come with sails anymore, but that seems to be a thing. And B, are they in the right spot? Because the most common thing, especially practice day and Monday, is blowing up sails like this because they put the spreader right through them. The service guy who worked there last year, I asked him to send me a picture of the most common repair, and he happened to send me this and said spreader patch is missing. Have repair tape on your boat. Little 2-inch tears, small little tears, you tape them up yourself. They'll be absolutely fine. Spare battens. Second biggest request is we're missing battens. We lost battens. You should have spare battens. Take the battens from your old sails. Make sure you have a collection in your kit. Spare slides, spare cars, whatever moving parts are on your sails, boat, whatever, you should have spares.
Well, and this goes back to what Tommy was saying at the very beginning of this whole thing, getting prepared before you actually go to the island. I've had many times where, and it's not just one person, but people don't have all of their battens for all of their sails when they show up on the island. Yeah. Particularly guys that race in classes that just have jibs and they're furling jibs. They have battens and they show up on the island and they're missing 3 of their battens, or, it's make sure you got all that stuff before you load it in the boat. And practicing before you get to Block Island is the best way to do that.
All right. Now, there was some hot debate on this one last time around, but we stayed put with the order being the best mudslides, Mahogany Shoals being number 2, and number 3, Trader Vic's. The Trader Vic's,
I think you miscounted, Tommy. Are you sure that's how it came out?
Yeah. Trader Vic's did get a lot of votes. There was some contention, but I'm always the top shelf oar guy.
I think that's you in the picture right there at Mahogany Shoals,
it's
right?
Not, but I can see why you would say that. Anyway, we did have some lay days last time. There usually is a lay day or two. Block Island is really one of my happy places, and I do go there often for little getaways, often in the fall. There's amazing hikes. There's things that for 20 years I was going to Block Island, didn't even know existed. You can hike for hours. Rodman's Hollow, the North Lighthouse is amazing, and you can see 1BI from a whole different perspective. There's seals, off of the North Lighthouse. It's really cool. And they also have this fun thing called the Glass Float Project, which you can look up, and they've hidden, I want to say, 500 glass orbs, and you register them online when you found them. And I've found myself looking for these darn things too. But if you find yourself with a lay day, go do one of these. Go do one of these hikes or bike rides or whatever it is. The island is absolutely amazing, and there's more to it than
just the salt pond and the ore.
Drinking mudslides. Anyway, Jack, can you jump into chat and see if there's anything?
No, I did. I've been watching it, and the last one. Dan says, why are LS disallowed flying Hetzels unless grandfathered? I don't know if that's actually totally true, because we were just reading the regulations this morning, and it basically said that you can fly a Hetzel on the sprit as what called a free flying Hetzel if it's the same area as your biggest jib. So this would be like a jib top type sail or a
Yeah,
jib.
the sail that the rule is talking about is a jib top sail.
Yeah. So I
the
don't,
code
I
seems like-
I would ask for further
Yeah,
research on that, but we just read the regulations this morning, and that's how I would read it.
just for the gist of it, a code 55 under the current rule is the same as a code 65, but let's not go down that road today. But yeah, the rule that's in is essentially allowing jib tops at the end of the spread.
Right.
Sure.
And that's and all the other chats were just saying how great we are, and thanks for having this. Which you're welcome, and thank you for coming, because you guys are what makes this great for all of us.
Have a great day. If you want to reach out independently, feel free to give us a shout anytime if you have any other questions or want to make any
And don't
comments.
forget to bring your sunscreen, because even if it's foggy, you're going to get sunburn.
Have a great one.